And here we are, finally, part 3, the bit you've all been waiting for, when we actually start some proper work on the car. So, what's our first job today? Well, it's a sunny day, it's pretty cool outside because we're now well into November. But what we're going to do today is basically work on the roof of the car. This is one of the major rust areas of the car, and one that worries me a little bit because as the winter gets on and it gets colder and wetter, basically there's more opportunity for that rust to spread. So what we're going to do today is rub the rust down, treat it with some red lead primer, and hopefully that'll be the end of that one for the time being. And then we can work out what colour we're going to paint on top of it. But first of all, before I start any work today, there's got to be a big shout out to what is our channel's first actual sponsor. And that shout out goes out to my dear friend Matt T, who supplied these fabulous microphones that I've got on my collar here. And I hope you're coming through loud and clear. So a big thank you to Matt T for your help with the beginning of this channel. And so, time to put on some scruffy clothes, some proper protective gear, PPE, and get on with the job. So, what are we looking at here? Well, this roof was originally the same colour as the rest of the car, an off-white kind of cream colour. And at some point in its history, a few years ago, somebody decided to cover up probably some rust stain that was creeping through, and went for this white sort of nice chocolate brown colour. Now, it was a good choice because the actual dashboard in this car is also chocolate brown, so it kind of goes with the theme of the car. And do you know what? I think I might keep it. Now, in my last video, I put up a question to say, do you think we should go, chocolate brown, chestnut brown, as it is, or go to matte black, or satin black, or gloss black, or even put a vinyl roof on it? But what we're going to do for the first part of the job is just get rid of all this surface. Now, luckily, this roof panel is very good. This is all surface. When we got the car first, we basically rubbed down this section to get rid of all the loose paint and rust to see what we actually had. Now, again, the roof panel is very, very good. There is no filler in this roof whatsoever. In fact, do you know what? There's no filler in the whole body of this car as far as I've seen so far. Possibly a little bit in the valance, but we'll look at that later. So today, we're going to be rubbing this down and using good old-fashioned red lead primer to cover it back up again. And we've got to get that done while we've got some sunshine, because it's a lovely day. Now, we've done a few little test patches before we get started. Now, just seeing how deep the rust goes and working on it. And our tool of choice today is going to be this thing. Now, usually I'd get in there with my angle grinder and a flap disc, but being as it's a roof panel, which is, you've got to be a little bit careful, I've gone for the multi-tool. Now, this is a new thing to me, which I bought fairly cheaply from a supermarket that was selling them on special offer, mainly for a bit of woodwork. I'm not a great woodwork guy, I'm more of a metalwork guy. I'd rather be welding than sawing. So I picked this up, but actually it's become quite a favourite tool of mine because it's very, very usable. I've used it for, as I say, chopping up timber, making little adjustments to timber jobs inside the house, little woodwork jobs, and it's really, really handy. And it also comes with this handy little detail sander end, which comes with Velcro pads of various different types. It comes with about 10 different pads on it. So what we're starting with today, now I did a little bit here, and I started out with an 80 grit, and this took forever and a day to get down to what you can see here. So what we've done is we've switched the pad to a 60, which is a little bit more, a little rougher, as if you're used to sandpaper, you know that the lower the number, the rougher the grit you're going to go with. Now, so we're going to use this one and basically try and do as much of this as we can in one foul swoop. Then we're going to clean back and red lead primer over the top. A lot of people say this is old-fashioned. We should use something like a Genelite or something like that, which have done in the past. But I find that those products, they do work, but then you can't always see where you've been or what you've done. So we're going to go old school on this because it's an old school car. So let's get the scruffies on and get on with the work. So while working on the roof, our bare minimum is going to be a dust mask because basically we don't know what's in this paint. This could be very old, could be lead-ridden stuff, and the dust is, quite a lot. Eye protection, just in case of flying debris, And I know it's not particularly necessary, but always good when you're working on cars to wear a good sturdy pair of steel toe cap boots. Now, safety first, first aid last. Okay, let's give this a go. So let's see how we're getting on. So we've seen bare metal in a few places, and the indents are pretty much flush with the surrounding area. Now, this is actually taking quite a long time. We said we weren't going to do this. We weren't going to revert to our old friend of the flap disc and the angle grinder. But I think in the circumstances of how long this is going to take, yeah, extreme measures, I think. Okay, so time for the big guns. Now, there are times in life when we need to use sort of subtlety, and there are times in life when we need to be a little bit more aggressive. Our old friend, the angle grinder. Now, it's not, I've gone for quite a low or medium grit disc on this one. We don't want to go too crazy. It is a roof, we don't want to go through in anywhere, but this is just going to speed up the process along. So you're going to be in high speed again, so let's see you in a bit. So again, we're going to stop, have a quick wipe down of the panel. Start to clog up your tools, and we'll see how we do it. I'd like to get this all done in one hit if I can, but if we can't, well, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day. But as you can see, we're covering a massive amount more ground with the angle grinder. Now, I know some people are going to be saying, oh, you haven't got the guard on your grinder, and yes, I'm aware of that, and it's not best practice, but it allows you to use the full area of the disc and also stops the thing clogging up quickly. So we're being as safe as we can be, but as I say, I know people are going to complain, so if you want to put in the comments about that, then feel free, and you're quite within your rights to do so. Safety is always paramount. There's no point, you know, losing a finger while doing a car project. It's you know, it's not going to make the enjoyment of the car at the end of it worthwhile if you're missing a digit. So, blue stop tip, be safe. Okay?
One copyright 3 hour later.
And so, here we are, some probably hour later now, and we are pretty much done. Now, the angle grinder and flap disc made short work of this, but we also used, in the center, we used the vibrating tool, because basically some of the pitting in the middle was quite deep, and we have to be careful about thickness of the roof. But it's actually a pretty good panel for a 60-year-old car. So basically, our roof now looks awful, like the surface of the moon, but we've rubbed out pretty much all the bad places. And we've also taken the bit of the edge off the top of the paint as well. So we've got something to adhere to in a moment when we apply our primer. Now, here's a little cliff top tip for you. should you go to your shed, as I've just done, and looked in your tin of thinners, which you're going to use to wipe down, and you find that your thinners is out, there's a little trick you can use. Now, run to your wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever's bedside cabinet, and look for some nail varnish remover. Now, people are going to go up in horror about this, but basically it's acetone based and works very well as a wipe down should you need to. And this is what we're reverting to today. As I say, this is such a budget build, but as I say, I went to my tin of thinners and found that it basically had dried out. So that's what we're going to be using today. We've also made sure that all our electrics are off. Now you can see the amount of dust on the car now. I'm so glad I washed it the other day, how much we've actually removed from the car. So we are absolutely covered. We've gone through about 6 or 7 of the end discs here and a couple of flap discs. So you will need some consumables to make this happen. Okay, so next we're going to wipe down, and then we're going to make good and start to prime. So, back to the roof. We've got a nice clean cloth. In this case, it's just a dishcloth. Nothing highly exciting. Doesn't have to be microfiber. Doesn't have to be anything exciting. Okay, we're just going to douse it with a big old dose of the liquid, and then we're going to just use it to rub down and clean and prep the surface. Now, as I say, you can use, if you've got the ability to get to your local shop, more time than I've got today, then you can use panel wipe, a good quality finish. And you can see the amount of muck that's come off there. Look, that was just on the surface. It didn't look so bad. And this is what we pulled off with just a bit of acetone. Go around to the other side. And again, we're just wiping down. There's no wrong or right way to do this. It's just simple prep. You want your paint to stick, you rub down to the best you can, and then you remove any dust, which is going to stop your paint from adhering to the edges. As I say, we're only going to be doing a rough repair. It's just, you can see, look at the muck coming off of there. It's just corrosion prevention today. We're not doing top coat. This isn't prep for, a full respray. We're literally just getting rid of the rust that's been plaguing this car since we've had it in the roof. As you can see, nice shiny bare backlit places there. Much better. So today we're using our old friend red lead. Now, people say this is old fashioned and a thing that people used to do in the 70s, but it works. And also in this, in a budget conscious way, you can buy rust converters, and I've used them myself in the past. But in this case, we're covering a large area. It's going to need to be flatted down and painted. And to be honest, this car's never going to be a show queen. That's not the point of it. Having spoken to a lot of people and had a lot of interesting opinions from people in my last video, we decided that, it's going to be semi-wrap look, let's put it that way. We're going to tidy it up and make it as nice as it can be, but we're not going to go crazy. It's not going to be a full respray. It's going to be basically a good original usable car with some modifications that have been, this brown roof is how it's been for Lord knows how many years. So this is what we're going to do. Now, another top tip: when you're buying red lead, if you go to your local parts place or your local B&Q maybe or something like that, your DIY centre, they're going to sell you it in the smallest possible tin you can get, which will be about 350, 400 mils, something like that. Not very big, and you're going to pay about 10 quid for it. Now, the best thing to do is to buy this from a trade outlet or motor factors, and you can buy it in litre sizes. That is going to last you a long, long time. Just stir it up and use it, and you're going to have that for a long time, and it's going to be very cost effective. I'm just using a standard brush today. Now, you're all going to go, oh my god, Cliff is brush painting the roof of his car. But it is what it is. We're just going for a uniform cover now to cover up what we've now rubbed down. I want to get this covered up as quickly as we can because we are working in the winter. Okay, so, and what happens in the winter? Damp. So basically, going for a good uniform cover, quite thick, helps fill the gaps up a little bit because, as I say, this is just going to be rust prevention, making the roof get any worse than it was. Because if we left it any longer, we're going to start seeing maybe holes going through into the inner surface. One thing must be said about these DKWs is the thickness of the steel is, no offence, so much better than something like British Leyland or whatever, or Ford from this point of view. You know, if you look at, say, around at this time, a Ford Corsair, gorgeous car, my favourite classic cars, but the metalwork thickness is not great. In fact, my late father worked for Ford on the pressing line during the 1960s. He always reckoned that Ford, at this point in the 1960s, pressed most of the panels twice, basically get as much out of the steel as they possibly could. And seeing some of the old, 1960s Anglias and Corsairs and things like that, I can quite believe it. Because the steel quality, and I'm not having a go at anybody's classic car now, but the steel quality on some British-made cars in the 1960s is very, very thin. So what we are doing here is we're travelling in the same direction for our brush strokes, and we're spreading the paint out as evenly as we can, and hopefully in the sunshine some of the brush lines will drop out anyway, but we're going to be buffing this down before we ever got any time to go on top of it. Okay, so let's just keep it simple, nothing exciting, nothing clever has to be done here. This is just rust prevention today. If we were doing this as a complete strip of this roof back to bare metal, then we'd be here for hours and hours. It would take days to do this. But this is basically just to do the best we can in the time we can to prevent the weather from making this car any worse than it is. So, as I say, we're working to the edge of the roof. We've not even bothered to mask up today. Because basically we are just covering up the rust. Gone back to bare metal in as few places as possible. There's no blue sections where he's grown. If you're ever doing this, if you're rubbing down a large area of flat metal on a car, just stop every now and again, put your hand on the metal, check for temperature. If it feels hot to your hand, like bath water hot, move to a different part, start again. But this paint is actually just sticking, because of the wind blowing today and the sunshine, this paint is actually hardening off literally as we paint. So we're going to have to be relatively quick for what we're doing. Dabbing a little bit, I rubbed a little bit down on the back wing. So we're going to cover that as well. So as I say, we are being generous. This is not Del Boy, this is not a little dabble do you? But we are keeping our brush strokes in the same line. And we are maximising our coverage, making sure that we are not leaving any area of bare metal. And what this is also doing is showing up places where the sanding probably wasn't the best and didn't go right the way down into the steel, but the lead in the red oxide will basically help to prevent this. This is just the thought this is getting worse than it was. It's not about a paint job. This is not how it's going to be. We're not going to hand paint this car. Okay, so just in case anyone's worried, we're just rubbing down, getting rid of rust, and coating it with rust prevention cover. Now here we have a little interlude in our painting. Now yesterday I did a little bit of extra work off camera, as it were, because sometimes when it was really bitterly cold yesterday, it must be said, and very breezy, so it wasn't really filming weather. But while I was there, I did a bit of rubbing down and black painting on the inside headlamp slam panel. Rubbed down the wheels and gave them a coat of silver paint, which has brought them on so much better. And thinking about, as we were the other day, about the rust damage where it's just staining. Here's a section of the bonnet, which was the same as this until yesterday. Now this was done with some cutting compound and a rag, which just shows you what this paint is like underneath. Now there's still some scabby bits of surface, but compared to that, so we did this, and we also we chased along the window frames, which were really grotty and rusty looking. Now, they weren't actually rusty at all. Basically just some surface corrosion, which when we got the cloth and a bit of rubbing compound on, came out really well. This section here, right, okay, I don't know if you can see the difference in colour here. This is how it was before. This is the boot lid. Flat, bland, rusty. And here, again, rubbing compound. Excuse the dust. This is from our thing. Rubbing compound. You can actually see the difference in colour between the two is like between the difference between grey and actually white. So this car, paintwork wise, a lot of it will come back with a really good machine button. This off-white colour will come back sparkling, I think, with a good dose of cutting compound. Get the buffer out and basically do it here. Again, around these window frames were so rusty, almost like the bonnet as far as rust was concerned. Now this is just like 10 minutes with a rag and some cutting compound. And you can see how the white's come back through from underneath. And again, along the top of the door here, or the edge of the window frame, sorry, which was just lots and lots of rust spots. We did a little bit on the back of the wing here, but again, the difference between the two pieces here, boot panel and here, after 5 minutes with a rag and some cutting compound. So just a little interlude and a little bit of extra content. As you can see, the roof is now resplendent in its red primer, ready for next time. And so here we are. And yes, I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, that's terrible, Cliff. Oh no, it was so much better with brown and the rust. But all we've done today is basically rust prevention. We weren't going to look for, you know, an amazing top coat, amazing quality, because basically what we're doing today was getting rid of all that terrible surface pitting and lumps and bumps on the roof, down to as bare metal as we can without thinning the roof out too much as far as the panel is concerned, or warping it with heat, and basically then treating it with a rust preventative. Now, as I say, it's a very rough rust preventative, but by applying it by brush, we've put on a very thick coating. Now, what that allows us to do is when we come to do the top coat, we've got a lot of stuff that we can sand down. So basically, when we come around to this next time, what we're going to do is going to sand that down to a nice smooth finish as we can do. Then maybe use like a high build primer on top of it, or a filler primer to get the sort of smooth finish that we want. And then on top of that is going to be, yep, you guessed it, we're going back to chocolate brown. So this basically summed up today's episode. It's all about taking the time. You can do so much with so little, and this is what we're doing. We're trying to teach people that you can buy a car on a very small budget. You can do things yourself. You can use the simplest of tools and things that you've got at home and make a really sensible job of something. And so the sun sets on another episode of Auto Insane. Now, as I say, I know what we've done today isn't to everyone's liking and everyone's quality, but this is about low budget cars and the things that trying to make this an accessible hobby for everybody, not just the people who can just own thousands of things. So feel free to like and comment in the area below. But as I say, thank you for keeping on with this channel. We're going now for about 3 weeks to a month, and if you're still here, I'm really happy that you're here. If you're new to watching this channel, then please like and subscribe, as it makes a massive difference to us. So on that, we're signing off on chapter 3, and let's hope to see you again another day.